Hi, and you're very welcome to Atlas Insights, a podcast from Trilogy Software, and more specifically, the customer service end of the company, where we have developed an AI first model for customer support. And over the next number of weeks, we're going to introduce different concepts from our platform. Today, I have Philippe Renaud with me, who is the SVP for customer support. So, my boss, so be nice. And today we're just going to go over Atlas itself, the initial, how it came to be, and what we've learned so far in that particular element and where we see it going. So without further ado, welcome, Philippe.
Thank you, Colin, and happy to be here. So yeah, I think we'll focus on a kind of general set of key dates and concepts we have set up along the year or nearly 2 years now. And as you said, there will be further episodes to dig a little bit deeper into some of these aspects. But maybe we can start with some key dates. We started like 1 year and a half ago, before ChatGPT, so we're kind of ahead of schedule on that. And we're not the only ones. Some providers had done some great work already on AI. So we started by implementing some copilots, which is now a very, very classic tool to have. But at the time, it was quite unusual, and Forethought was one of the company providing a great tool there. They were, again, quite ahead of the game in terms of AI deployment, and they offered a tool which was allowing agents to query tickets, query knowledge base, get some kind of insights there, and easily find, I would say, key information amongst the huge amount of information you find in support. In Trilogy, we have nearly 80 products to support. We have around 100 agents, so there is a lot of information to look into, and such copilot can be very, very useful to improve productivity, which was the initial target from this AI implementation, mostly about gaining productivity for agents. After the launch of ChatGPT in November 2022, Forethought aligned their tools and started to blend their own technology with GPT. So we started looking a bit more into the chatbot aspect of it. Obviously here, you're looking more than just productivity gain from agents, but suddenly you open a field of improving the quality of the answer, improving the response time for customers who can have 24/7 access to a chatbot. So we're really looking to quickly work on that with Forethought, and we deployed their chatbot solution across 1 or 2, 3 products. And because it was working fine, we deployed it amongst all our products. We reached something like 5 to 20% resolutions with this chatbot, so it was working fine. But we quickly looked to other solutions just to make sure that we were, monitoring the market. And also we're reaching the first limitations. So that's a point we'll probably zoom in a little bit more later on. But just querying a knowledge base, even with an AI, even with a very smart AI, and trying to get solutions can be very limited. And particularly in our case, where we have quite technical products that can require actions on the customer environment or on SaaS environment. Just looking at the knowledge base article, even with a very well-trained bot, is usually not enough. And we found VoiceFlow, which is another provider providing a very interesting approach based on flow building. Forethought at the same time was also working on flow building. So suddenly we had like 2 solutions working on flow building, and maybe we can look at a little view of what we mean by flow building. It's mostly driving the LLM and the AI to some points where you know a bit better what you want to ask it or what you want to execute as a task. So a blend of chat and actual actions that you want to perform on the back end. So both had the same ideas, but both came with very different solutions. If you look at VoiceFlow chat, it was pretty much a traditional approach, like in an IVR, where you're basically asking the customer to make some choices. They were using the AI to sometimes do what we call intent capture and try to understand by just reading the chat what the customer wanted to do. But you could blend this approach with some very, very choice selection kind of decision. And also you could very easily decide what to do with at any step. So you're basically building your workflow and deciding if you wanted to call an endpoint, read some data, execute some LLM call. You could switch between calling GPT-4, Turbo, Claude. You could easily, I would say, just publish some text that would be with variants based on the various AI solutions you would choose. So very strict workflow, but inside each step of the workflow, you have a lot of capacity to do various actions. Whereas Forethought was, I would say, full AI, and they were basically trusting the AI to know what to do next. So you would capture an intent from the customer, understand what they want to do, and then read the policy that you would ask this workflow to do. And again, an AI would try to understand what would be the next step. So you could very quickly go from a node in the workflow to another one in another part of the workflow, just because the capture of the intent would suddenly realize, oh, I made a mistake. So the Forethought approach looked very good on the paper, and we initially started with that. But we faced a few limitations, which is first, the intent capture is not always perfect. So you could suddenly switch off and leave a branch which was perfectly valid and go on another intent. And also the number of actions you could take for an intent was a bit hard to implement. And that was the main blocker. We had some need in Trilogy to really do a lot of actions in the background, like calling endpoints from our backend and actually giving the power to the AI to execute the same actions our agents would usually execute. And VoiceFlow was very well designed for that. So if you go back to the dates, in June, we started playing with VoiceFlow, realized how powerful it is by this blend of AI chat and programmed endpoint actions. So we started deploying it across the board, and most importantly, we started packaging it under a product we named Atlas, which is really the core of this podcast. So this product is really something we have started standardizing. So we build a flow for each product we are supporting, where there is a core of set functionalities that we're going to offer to the customer, with this AI interaction, which makes it very chatty and very easy to capture intent and look into knowledge base with a RAG approach. But also, if we know exactly what we have to do, we will deep dive and go to a point where we know what we have to do and query the backend, read data, write data, execute a set of actions, even protected actions through VPN. We can really do some advanced actions. And we give back the answer to the LLM in the end, to Atlas, which will just keep on discussing with the customer. So this, I would say, setup we've called Atlas. And if you look at the data from full AI deflection, it went very quickly up when we started deploying Atlas across the board. You can see the past week. So we went from having an average of 9% deflection very quickly to 35%. That was amazing results. We need product expertise to do that, because you need to know exactly what the agents are usually doing, what kind of task they would be executing. And we assigned one person per product to do this work, so that they would really transfer their knowledge and their expertise into Atlas. And that's how we reach the 35%. And obviously, at this stage, you kind of reach some new blockers that we're going to talk about, like the very advanced troubleshooting that an L2 agent would be doing on a complex product. But also some elevations when you need to transfer suddenly the tickets to other team who have no AI bot to handle it. So 35% was our kind of maximum result at this stage. And so if we go back to the key dates, we're going to see that we have additional work in progress. One is what we call Atlas Ticket. We realized that Atlas chat was very good because you could interact directly with the customer, ask the customer to provide some files or some additional informations. But you can do the same pretty much with a ticket, right? It just has to be more asynchronous, and you have to do a deeper work of knowing exactly what you want to ask, because you need to use the full history of the ticket first. So that's what we did in January, and gained some more full deflection. But the next stage is really what we call Atlas L2, which is going to be doing very advanced L2 troubleshooting, very promising, but we're going to share that into a specific episode of the podcast.
Cool. And just to kind of go back to the data, what was it? The AI resolution, right? Just to kind of clarify, that's where it's full deflection. So there is no interaction whatsoever taking place on our side of the fence other than with the AI. We also have, obviously, other ones where the AI has helped, but it has gone to an agent. But this is purely like 54% in the week just gone were 100% deflected to AI.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a massive gain. As you say, there are other gains we made on other aspects, like improving productivity or half deflection where the AI would be doing the first part of the work and we still need an agent. But these numbers here are fully deflected, which means, as you said, zero agent intervention here, full AI management of the ticket.
Cool. And it is that was kind of one of the driving factors, was going back to, I think it was October, where we said we want now the AI to be doing the work. And as you said, that's where the voice flow changeover from being forethought, where it was more information driven, to voice flow, where it is very much more action driven. So
Absolutely.
Giving it the power to make the change.
Yeah, and that's the key, I would say, the key insight of this whole Atlas project and product is just asking an LLM a question, even a very advanced one, even very well trained, even on a full extent of documentation that could include the usual user documentation, but also code base or I would say advanced technical manual. You can reach a certain point, but you very quickly reach limitations because of this lack of capacity to perform actions in the backend, read the data somewhere that will obviously give a pass to the troubleshooting. So yeah, advanced troubleshooting skills basically that you need to give to the bot by driving it to the point step by step.
Cool. And in terms of the functionality that we have rolled out so far, as you said, the last one being the level 2 troubleshooting, this is kind of the spectrum that's there at the moment for most products.
Yes, we quickly realized there was a pool of very, very standard functions that kept coming back from our customers. Like if you have an outage, you immediately want people to be able to not only be notified, but quickly have a bot able to check if their ticket is related to this outage or not. Asking an update on a previous ticket you had opened. Obviously, all the basic questions related to knowledge base and very simple tasks that were coming all the time for a specific product we had to automate. But as I said, sharing backend information, being able to execute some information, some query in the backend was actually quite important and very, very important for the satisfaction of the customers. Always keep the option to connect to an agent. We have a chat with agent obviously available, but also the capacity to open an asynchronous ticket. So all these features are core features of Atlas. Whatever the product you are facing Atlas on, you are going to have these options and these functions implemented. And now we're working on this level 2 troubleshooting.
Cool. And in terms of the rollout to date, what issues have we faced?
Yeah, so good question. Everybody probably think the problems or the main issues are technical, but we really realized quickly that the main problem we had was to have the customer interact with his AI in a very normal way. As soon as the customer knew that they were interacting with a bot, they were basically stop sharing any kind of valid information or would start speaking with 1 or 2 words queries, whereas we know the LLM power needs to be fed with a lot of information, right? It needs actually real sentences to understand the meaning and the intent of the customer. It needs a lot of data. So our main issue was actually to make sure the customer was feeling good with Atlas. And this led us to plenty of changes. One of them was to make sure that at any point they could leave Atlas so that they would not feel trapped with Atlas, because there is nothing worse than having a bad experience and being trapped in it. So that was the first step. And then we realized we were not chatty enough at the beginning. So we had to basically stop being super focused on efficiency and be like, oh, that's your problem, I'm going to solve it. And start by, I would say, making the customer comfortable and explain their problem and their issue so that they would start doing real sentences. And suddenly the intent capture would start triggering and say, hey, okay, we've been speaking for 1 minute now. I start to understand your problem much better. So I think I'm going to propose you to do this. And this kind of more human interaction and also slow pace leading to the actual understanding of the intent works, I don't know, 2 times much better than when we're trying to capture the intent on step 1 and usually failing. And then you jump from one intent to another and the customer starts to get pissed off and you lose the customer in the process, and obviously no satisfaction in the end. So yeah, I think basically working on this human customer behavior aspect was actually a big issue we faced and we hadn't anticipated at all. Probably because we are living in a highly technical environment, so we were jumping on the challenges of the technical challenge straight away. how do we plug our endpoint and backend queries with the bot. And we kind of left behind the customer experience, which is always bad. So when we came back to the customer experience, checking the transcripts, looking at how people were reacting to the Atlas bot, we realized the problem was not anymore with the technical challenge, but the customer satisfaction.
Cool. Yeah. And I do know, we had a lot of time where you would build the bot, you would deploy it, and all your testing, and you never test your own work, but that was kind of what happens. You test your own work, you answer the questions as they should be answered, and then you'd go and you'd look at the transcripts after you'd rolled it out, and it would always be a guessing game as to like what the intent was originally. And even to be fair, the original intent capture system that was available in VoiceFlow was somewhat lacking, and so we worked with them to at least iterate it forward to a more usable format, more like what we have with Atlas Ticket. Because again, as you say, that it's very hard to get intent capture from computer broken. That initial.
Exactly, and you can see the lack of trust, because sometimes the Atlas was giving the perfect answer and the customer would still ask for an agent who would basically answer exactly the same thing word for word, and the customer would be happy. So you can see how important it is to build the trust. And I think a very, very important step for that, and that will be the topic of the next podcast episode, will be this L2 troubleshooting, which we already see is super powerful now. And I'm sure we'll give the trust to people that, okay, when I'm interacting with Atlas, I can have this level of troubleshooting and this level of answers that sometimes I didn't even have from a human being, because I don't know, if you have 400 pages manual to query to really find a good solution, and AI will be able to do that, a human might miss the key information. So it will help build the trust by showing to the customer how deep Atlas can work, and I'm sure will again increase the resolution rate by a lot.
Yeah, and even being able to contextualize the answers that you've given with backup, which has been very kind of useful once you get past the making sure that the links are correct when it comes out, but being able to say, look, this is what I think it is. Here are the articles I've based it on, or here is the code script that I know is relevant here. So that makes sense. And in terms of VoiceFlow, this is kind of a sample of what people would see building that flow.
So you can see how, I would say, hardwired it is compared to, for example, Forethought solution. Again, both have their drawbacks. It's harder to maintain, and Forethought will make progress on their solutions. So I'm sure they will come up with a way to come back in the game. But right now, with the hardwire solution, we gain some precision in driving the conversation where we want it to. And you can see at each step the amount of various actions you can take, from proposing some set piece of choices, executing some get or post API endpoints, querying an LLM to get an answer. So you really hardwire, but on each step you have a lot of options, and you can still use intent detection at some point to make, if you are on a kind of free step, you're like, okay, I don't know what to do from there. You can try to ask something to the customer and find their intent, and suddenly branch to another component you have developed. So it's very powerful. I think it's the future of AI, because LLM by itself is too generic. Mixed with this kind of powerful workflow tool, you can pretty much build anything.
Yeah, no, definitely. It is so useful to know that, yes, you can control the information that has hit that particular point in time, as opposed to it being 3 iterations down the line of an LLM, where at that stage it could have varied greatly. Perfect. Okay. So I think that kind of covers off the timeline as we have it. Each one of these colored boxes is basically probably an episode in itself, which we'll get to. But it looks quite exciting for Q1 onwards.
Yes, I want to thank you for organizing this podcast series, and I'm super excited in advance about the episode about Atlas VoiceFlow, where you could go a little bit deeper into what we've done with VoiceFlow, and Atlas L2, which will include part of what we do on log upload and translating the expert of the product and the expertise of the expert into some kind of advanced AI troubleshooting steps. That's super exciting progress we're making, and excited to see the future episode of the podcast.
Thank you very much for joining me this episode. Next episode, we shall touch on VoiceFlow itself, as we talked about here, and how it is used in Atlas Chat and how we have deployed it to date in Trilogy. Thank you again, Philippe, and we'll talk next week.
Thank you, Colin.